Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. The next sequel that we're going to be covering is a Valentine's Day-ish sequel. It's called Mirror, Mirror 3, The Voyeur. It has an awesome cast. It has a young Mark Ruffalo, Billy Drago, Elizabeth Baldwin, David Naughton from American Werewolf in London, but most importantly, as this week's guest, actress Monique Parent. Monique's kind of the reason that we're doing this movie. I've always wanted to interview her. When I saw her name on Twitter, I was like, oh my God, I remember her from so many movies growing up. And then I watched her in a movie called Jurassic City when I was getting ready to interview Vernon Wells because he was in it. And it was so cool to be able to connect with her and tell her how much I loved her work over the years, because my age fits when her career sort of started. So that was my like B-movie watching days, was seeing her in a bunch. I remember my dad renting Night Eyes 3 or borrowing it from a buddy. It was Shannon Tweed and Andrew Stevens and Shannon Tweed's sister, like kind of like that romantic thriller. And she was in it. So I remember her from that. And it was just so cool to hear her perspective, you know, her journey to Hollywood, coming from a small town in California, and then taking her and her cat and going to LA and chasing her dream. And she made it happen. So we talked about her career, some credits over along the way, which I love to do. But I love talking about what she's up to nowadays. She just had a movie come out on Lifetime Movie Network a few weeks back, starring her and former guest and friend of the podcast, Sean Kanan, Karate's Bad Boy. It's called Killer Ambition. It's on the Lifetime Movie Network. I'll put the link in the episode notes so you can check that out. Also, her website, uniquemonique.com. Love that name. So uniquemonique.com. And then also her YouTube channel. We started talking about it at the end of the interview. Then I lost power and she was so kind to hold on, but didn't come back on for like 12 hours, which kind of sucked because it was cold. But we made it. We made it through it. But yeah, so I'll put her YouTube channel. She has a ton of subscribers. She really helps out women, or really anyone, I guess, but really tailored towards women that have gray hair, because she ditched dyeing and she went straight gray. And there's not a lot out there when it comes to makeup tutorials and fashion for people with gray hair. So she took the ball and ran with it, and she's doing that, and she's doing great. So she was a blast to talk to. Before I start the interview, please subscribe wherever you're listening, review, rate, share us, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And then you can watch Mirror, Mirror 3 on Plex TV. So you can find it online, or you can watch it, really on any app, on like a Roku or a Fire Stick. Or if you want, I'm going to make like a best of that I'm going to put on my Twitter. So that'll be on our Twitter at Sequels Only, because the movie's bonkers. It's so bonkers, and Jamie's going to hate me for watching it. But enough with that. Now it's time for the amazing Monique Parent.
It is a mural. It's wallpaper.
Nice.
Yeah, I bought it like 7 years ago when I wasn't even living any place that, it was just in a rental, and I carried it around. I schlepped it around until I had a place to put it in.
Did you do it yourself?
I did it with my boyfriend.
It's the worst.
He was really, really good and really patient with me.
Oh, nice. Okay.
He had done it before. I had never done it.
Oh, nice. The worst is taking it off. It stinks to put on, but taking it off is, we bought an old house. We're in Jersey. We bought an old Victorian, and it took forever, to the point that we just painted over it. One of the rooms, it was like that vinyl one from like the 30s. So we just painted over it.
Yeah. I love peel and stick wallpaper. I did that in my old place. Yeah. And it was awesome. When I moved, I just pulled it off and like threw it away.
Well, it's awesome. I'm happy that we connected, because I'm going to be honest with you. I've known you for years, maybe given my age.
I've been around for a long time.
What you have, but you really look the same. I watched a few of your older things. Like I watched Mirror, Mirror 3, which that movie is crazy.
That was a trip. That was a crazy to shoot.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then another one, we'll talk about more of it a little bit later, but like The Catcher, I don't know how I've never seen that before. It's on YouTube, the full movie, but that is the craziest horror movie ever.
Yes. I've been hiding in plain sight for many years.
That's awesome. So how did it all begin? You grew up in California, right?
Grew up in California, and I was reading glasses. Though they're new, the bifocals, and so now for the first time I'm wearing glasses. You are clearer with the glasses on, but I'm used to not wearing glasses, so
That's fine.
I'm used to everything being fuzzy. I grew up in California. I was 3.5 years old, and I was obsessed with ballerinas. And I demanded that my parents put me in ballet class. And, they had never had a kid before. Yeah. They thought, okay, she's very insistent. Let's do it. And it was just, I was off and running from that point on. I did my first theater production when I was 9. And I was really active with the community theater. Then I moved to Los Angeles when I was 24.
Wow. What made was it always theater? Because I know a lot of people, their first love, and really a lot of actors and actresses I talk to, like their real love is theater, but theater doesn't pay the bills.
Theater doesn't pay the bills. It does not. It took me a while to learn to find the same satisfaction in a film. I haven't done a play in a long time, and I can't imagine dedicating that much time to something that none of your friends come see. It's weird seeing it out from start to finish, and living that whole experience from start to finish versus those tiny little pieces in film. But I've learned, you figure out how to find the satisfaction in it.
Yeah. The huge difference, I'm sure, is like just not seeing that reaction. Unless you're in the movie theater or you're peering over your neighbor's shoulder and they're watching on their TV, you don't see people actually enjoying your work, at least when you're on stage, like a comedian, like that rush of getting that.
You feel it. You feel it from the crew.
Oh, cool.
You do feel it from the crew. You can feel the energy. When a take goes well, the entire crew is happy about it. So, you can feel when things go well.
That's good.
It's just a different energy.
So 24, you go to LA. Did you have any connections? Like, did you know anybody out here already?
No, nobody, not a single person. It's like I drove down with my cat, and my cat, we're small town cats. She's looking out the windows like, these buildings are way high up there.
So what was the first thing in your mind? Did you have like a first step? Was it like find a job, or did you go right into it?
I had worked as an extra back when I lived in San Luis Obispo. I worked as an extra on the film My Blue Heaven.
Oh, nice.
The Steve Martin film.
Great movie, yeah.
And every scene that I worked on as an extra, for some reason, once the actress came into the room, I was no longer in that scene. But so they kept calling me to set. And finally they said, okay, let's just make her be a stand-in. So I worked as Carol Kane's stand-in, which was terrific and way better than being an extra. And, I got to be right there and learn so much. And that was super exciting. So when I was on that set, somebody, Seth, I can't remember his last name. Here it is 31 years later. He told me to go to the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And so I came, and as soon as I moved to LA, I went to the Beverly Hills Playhouse, and I immediately started studying. And it was wonderful.
The stand-in thing, I talked to a few people, and that was where they learned so much. Like, because until you get to be that person that they're blocking the shots up and setting everything up for, you won't know. So at least you have that opportunity while you're standing there. You're like soaking everything in.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just like, yeah, I want this world.
Ever since 3.5.
Yeah. And I've always just wanted this. I've always wanted to perform. I've always felt, I would be that little kid who was in the front yard playing princess and being, dramatic. I've always just been that way.
So you go to the Beverly Hills Playhouse. How long were you there before you were starting to audition, like when you got Secret Games?
I spent a year studying before I ever went out on my first audition. And my manager, Robert Lombard, who still represents me.
Nice.
We have separated and gone our different ways, and then we have come back together. Nice. And so he still reps me for some things. He's like, okay, do this one project. We don't ever want you to do nudity, but you'll do it this one time because you're going to get your SAG card. So I auditioned for it. And on my first audition, I booked my first job and got my SAG card.
Wow. Nice.
Which is like impossible to do.
I know. Oh, that's amazing. Usually it's like guy at bar, girl at table, and you got SAG card first time out.
SAG card right in there. And, it hasn't been, I've never paid the bills as an actor. It's never paid the bills, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, you love it. That's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. But other people like, play basketball as a hobby. I'm not saying it's a hobby for you, but I'm saying that is your love,
Mm-hmm.
That's so great.
Yeah.
And then on that movie, you worked with Billy Drago was on that movie. And then obviously years later, you work with him on Mirror, Mirror 3. And it's so cool when I talk to people and I look up and down their IMDb, because I'm serious. Like, I've seen some of the movies you were in, more of the later ones. I actually watched Jurassic City because I chatted with Vernon Wells. So I always like to watch different movies throughout people's IMDb. But one of you, I don't even know I think it might have been on YouTube, but Buford's Beach Bunnies.
Yes.
I never even knew of I'm sure Tom Hanks had siblings. I probably could have guessed that, but I never knew he had a brother. And then I go in this deep dive. He's like the greatest brother to Jim Hanks, right? Wasn't that his name?
Yeah.
So,
Jim Hanks.
Yeah. So he lets him do voiceover work for his roles. So that's a pretty cool connection. So
yeah,
that movie, that was your second. Was that the second thing you did?
That was my second movie. And, when I was on Secret Games, I had never been on a film set before. And they called me and they said, okay, your call time is 5 p.m. It's a night shoot. I was like, okay, what time do you think I'll be done? And they said, probably around 8. And I thought that meant p.m.
Yeah.
No, it was all the way in the morning. So that was my first foray into it. And then on Buford's Beach Bunnies, we had one night that was shot over 3 weeks, and I really learned about continuity then. And it was really, I'd learned so many little lessons on each of these films.
Yeah, that's funny.
Don't do too many hairdos.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, don't feel like you need to change your hair in every scene, because sooner or later there will be that day at the end of the shoot where it's just entrances and exits, and it's just your hair. I have no hair left. It's gone. It's been fried off. We changed it so many times.
Does somebody pay attention to that pretty well, or is it on the actor?
Absolutely. Now, I'm on some films where, the actor does their own hair and makeup. But mostly, if you want a quality film, you have a makeup and hair department.
Oh, no, I know for that, but I'm saying, is there somebody that has like a Polaroid of you from day one and they're like...
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Good. Your hair and makeup team, they photograph you every day. So it's like this look, they would check it every day and they would make sure that this curl always had this little thing and this little, they would, they do it several times a day. Now cell phones, they're just like crazy. It was, when it was a Polaroid, you'd have the wardrobe department would have their own set of Polaroids. Makeup department would have their set of Polaroids. prop department have their set of Polaroids. Yeah, we went through a lot of Polaroid film back in the day.
No, as like a movie lover, and there's a ton of people that love movies and watch them like hawks. There's so many times you're watching, you're like, hey, that glass was just full.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to match that perfectly.
It's so hard. It's so hard. And everybody tries. And sometimes you realize that you messed it up and you just go, you know what? People live for finding that stuff. Let them find it.
Totally.
It's going to make somebody's day.
Yeah.
I saw the water bottle.
Yeah. Oh, the water bottle in Game. Was that Game of Thrones? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy. See, that's something that doesn't fit. One of those things is not like the other, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you got to have one person. Your one job is to just, because that's the beautiful thing about filmmaking is that everybody has just one job.
Yeah.
And they are working to do their one job to the best of their ability, and how everyone comes together to do that. It's always so amazing.
And it's so many hands that are involved. It's insane when you really think about like one scene, like one shot. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the one thing that's so fascinating, like, again, you went out and Seeker Games, your first one, you get your SAG card, but like right from there, you didn't stop working. Were you still doing theater at all, or you really had to give that up?
No, I really stopped doing theater at that point. It was just, just audition and work and make stuff. And I was still in class and rehearsing scenes and doing that. Yeah, it went for a long time. I've had a long run.
Yeah, no, like 7. I think it was like in 92, there was a handful. But then in 93, I think it was like 7 credits and then 8 credits. Not like every year there was something. But Night Eyes 3, I really wanted to cover that movie, but it's impossible to find. And that movie I think is cool because I really like Andrew Stevens and Shannon Tweed and Shannon Tweed's sister. Yeah. So I was able to find it I think when I first connected with you a while ago, and I could never find it again. But again, right in that run, you have all these movies that you're on the top of the call sheet. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a very blessed career.
Do you have any moments from the earlier part of the career that you, obviously from a really young age, you were like, I want to entertain? Was there a point that you're like, I could really do this? Like, was there a vote of confidence that you got from someone or in yourself after you maybe saw yourself on film for the first time?
Yeah, I remember I used to do local commercials because I was with the theater group. And of course, there's always, that's how you make connections in a small town. And I did local commercials and I'd see myself on camera. I go, you know what? I think I could probably do this. I think I have a shot. And my grandmother was sort of a bitter old woman. And she always said, I could have been. And I thought, you know what? I want to know what I could have been. I don't want to look back on my life and go, I could have been. I want to know. And I mean, have I reached the pinnacle of success? No. Ultimately, with my career, it's right around in this level. It's never going to reach this tippy top. But I know what I could have been. And I'm still at it. I'm still creating what I could have been.
Yeah. That's true. You never want to look back and say, oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda. You are putting your best foot forward so you can never have, regrets later in life.
It's not a dress rehearsal. Do it.
Do it. Yes. What were some of the commercials that you did with just local restaurants and
local, a local jewelry store and I think I did a lighting store. Yeah. Just local things when I was 18, 19.
Oh, this was in your hometown?
Yeah, in my hometown.
Oh, that's cool. I thought it was that when you got to LA.
Before I moved to LA.
Nice. Oh, that's cool.
I tried a number of things. I tried all the stuff I'm supposed to do. Have a business, work at this job, work at that job. And I just thought, I'm never going to be this age again. You got to do it.
Yeah.
Just go to LA.
And you did it. And then, so during this time, what kind of were you working, or were you able to have a job, like a full-time job, part-time job?
For a long time, I was able to make it as an
actor.
Oh,
that's great.
I've always tried to really keep my expenses low. I was never making bank, but I was able to, cover the rent most of the time.
Yeah. and do something that you love doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually, I sold clothing. There are these things in Costco called road shows. I was a person who went around Costco and I would sell at road shows. So it was sort of temp work. I did that for a lot of years. I did it with clothing, and then I did it with blenders.
I'm sure so many people, you have such a face that you can't forget. I think it's your eyes, because you can play a role and be like, when I watched Jurassic City, you were like this very sultry, like kind of, I don't even know what because it really didn't show really what your character was. You were just guessing because you were in a jail cell.
It was just like, she was in the drunk tank.
Yeah, just in the drunk tank. But then even in like watching Mirror Mirror 3, you have I don't know, your eyes are very memorable and like very engaging. So I know if I saw you at a Costco, it could have been the late 90s or the 2000s. I'd be like, oh, I knew who that is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd hear it a lot of times.
Yeah. Now, so Mirror Mirror 3, I thought it was pretty cool, because I don't know when you signed on to do that one, if they give you like the previous movie and say, hey, do you want to watch Mirror Mirror 2?
Yeah. They didn't give it to us, but I think I went to Blockbuster and rented it. And I watched it and I was like, okay, it's in. I wanted to do more horror movies.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I want to do a horror movie. And it was just it was one of the weirdest shoots I've ever been on. We had 2 directors. We were shooting in 2 locations. We would run back and forth between these 2 houses that were next door to each other. And it's, I just never felt like it was just the strangest experience.
Yeah. No, you can see that on screen. But the thing that was crazy when I saw that on your IMDb, when I reached out to you, and then I was like, wait, Mark Ruffalo, again, Billy Drago, David Naughton, and Elizabeth Baldwin. And then I'm like, let me see the previous one. Oh no. And then I clicked on Mark Ruffalo's. I was like, this has got to be his first movie. Then I'm like, wait, he's in the second one? And I'm like, Roddy McDowall's in the second one? So it's pretty amazing that they were to get all these people.
Yeah. Yeah. They really, really had a kind of an amazing cast.
Yeah. And your husband in the movie, that scene, I don't know what director shot that, or if any of the directors were like good to work with, but that scene when they're shooting the guy in that like opening, it's in the first 10 minutes, but they're
I'm gonna have to rewatch it because I haven't seen it in 25 years.
Oh, it's on, you can get it. It's on an app. It's on Plex TV. I can tell you the link, but it is crazy because the guy, your husband, is shooting a gun and each shot is a different gun sound effect. One sounds like a shotgun. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's movie making. I think that's so cool. And I think it was either on Unique Monique, which I love that name for your website.
Thank you.
I don't know if it was on there or on your IMDb. It was just talking about the VHS boom. And I think that's so cool. There's so many of those movies that got made that were made to go into the VHS store and get rented.
Yeah.
And some of them turned out to be amazing and memorable. So it's cool that you were part of that when you were coming up. That was that time.
Well, when I grew up, before I moved to Los Angeles, I worked in my parents' store. They had a convenience store, and they rented videos there. And I remember going over as Dad would be buying videos to have in his store, and he'd be looking at the books together, and he'd point out like the Shannon Tweed movies, and he'd be saying, "These are where I make my real money." It's like everybody comes in for the blockbusters, but the blockbusters only come out on this day or that day. You know, this was back in the 80s, 90s. Yeah. I was like, so that these B movies, I can move them around on the shelf, and when people come in, They're like, yeah, that's great. So that's where I make my money. And so I always knew when I was doing B movies that I was helping somebody's family, that somebody's parents were making money that way.
That's so true. And it was the box cover art. There were so many movies that I rented as a kid from my local video store. They were just so great. It was like they spent more money on the box cover artist than the movie.
Man always had the greatest box covers.
Which one?
Full Moon.
Oh,
Full
yeah.
Moon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Yes, and you worked with them down the road, right? You worked with them. Yeah. Those 1313 movies, they're Full Moon, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, those are Dave Dakota does the 1313 movies. And he's great fun to work with. And the first time I worked with Dave Dakota was on a Full Moon film.
Oh, okay. I interviewed one of his sound guys, this guy, Audio Andy. I don't know if he worked on that movie, but he worked on a lot of the David movies. I don't know if he worked on any of those 1313 movies, but yeah, I know he loves working with David. But it's all about, he is I guess it is in the now filmmaking, but the get it done fast.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Just because you can make a movie fast doesn't mean it's the best way to make it.
That is true. It's true.
3 days is not enough time to make a film.
No, it's not. And it's so funny that some of the movies that I really enjoy, like I know you worked with Jim Wynorski on a couple times. A few of his movies he did in like a week, and I'm like, that's insane to think about, like all these like kill effects, like all within a week you were able to shoot that.
Have you seen Papatopoulos?
No.
Papatopoulos is a documentary made about Jim Wynorski while we were making one of his 3-day movies.
Oh, cool. I got to watch that.
So, yeah, it's a fun documentary.
Cool. I talked to Jim, and no, he was very interesting.
I love Jim.
Oh, I do too.
He's a character.
Yes.
And he calls me on my birthday every year and has for 20, 25 years. I mean, he would do that before there was Facebook.
He's that kind of guy. But you're right. He is a character, because some of his answers, some of his stories, I'm like, wow. I feel like he's like in this character of this guy that, I don't want to, not the word bitter, but some of his stories that he had, like just working with like some companies. Yes, exactly. Yep. So obviously that first movie you did, your manager said this will be the only time you're going to have to do those type of scenes. And then when did it start? I don't know if it was Showtime or Cinemax, like those type of movies that you started working with. Like, I know you worked with Beverly Lynn a lot, who's great, who she's done a bunch of other movies too. Sure. So when did that happen that you like linked up with that?
Well, you know, I did a lot of the erotic thrillers in the early 90s. And in the late 90s, early 2000s is right when a lot of the channels, they started wanting to be more competitive with hardcore porn. And they wanted to try to bring in a lot of the women who did hardcore porn into more of these, you know, erotic things without considering that they're really not actors.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of really poor quality stuff that got made. I don't have a judgment against hardcore porn. I think a lot of the girls who did it thought it would make their careers better.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of girls who enjoyed their career in hardcore pornography thought making a softcore movie would make their careers better. And I don't think they enjoyed working on them. I think they had a much better time working in their chosen genre.
I'm sure.
You know, it's a lot of times they felt really uncomfortable with some of the acting scenes. But there was this push with a lot of companies to just try to bring in something that was going to be a harder edge. But I think that ended up sort of tanking the whole sort of erotica industry. as far as that sort of softcore thing.
Yeah.
Because if people want to watch hardcore porn, they're going to watch hardcore porn. And softcore's not going to satisfy them, generally.
Yeah.
And then they just started creating a bunch of really bad softcore movies that were not good and not sexy and not entertaining. And so people stopped watching them. And then people kind of stopped making them. And it sort of died off. So that was sort of like, that's my decade and a half of the sort of erotic thriller arc.
Yeah.
In a few sentences.
No, I think you're right, because it seemed like that's what it always was. And there was one that you were like the host of one, right? Wasn't there one that you were like kind of like a host and you presented a story, or? There
was one. It was, I'm trying to remember exactly. It was Playboy. It was for Playboy.
Yeah.
And there was a reality TV show, and I was a host, and Greg O'Rourke was my co-host. And it was presented as sort of a comedy. People send in their own home videos. One of those. Help me out here.
Like America's Funniest Home Videos, like that?
Yeah, like America's Funniest Funniest Home Videos, but with sexy stuff.
Yeah.
And when we auditioned for it, that's what they showed us as far as content. When we showed up on set, when we shot our wraparounds, we had this sort of like sterile studio environment. But two of the other hosts, like one of the other hosts was a hardcore porn performer. And he would be like interviewing people, and then the camera would pull back and he'd be having sex with them. And it was like, okay, wait a minute. If I am in a show with somebody who's doing this, then people are going to think I am going to be doing this. And I don't want to go down that path. That's a fine path if you want it, but that's not my path.
Yeah.
I'm going in this other path. So I bowed out of it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Jesus. How do you how do you like try to pull a fast one like that it's going to be shown in front of the person what's happening?
And then it was I don't know, was it Beverly who took over? They continued after me.
I don't remember.
They hired somebody who did a great job with it. He was very successful, and it was terrific. I just chose to, you have to be careful about how your career is handled. And I've done so much of the software stuff that I really have to be careful about walking that line and keeping it away from that because,
No, because there's obviously, I think it's more of like a taboo thing. Like people would be like, somebody could turn out being a great actress, and it's like, oh, but you did this thing 10 years ago.
I can't get an audition for a network TV show.
Really?
I don't go up on pilots. They don't bring me in. It's like, I don't exist in that world. And they know who I am.
Oh, I know that. I'm sure they do.
Can't get in. So that's why I'm super excited to now be doing Lifetime movies.
Yeah, that's great.
In fact, I've got one premiering tomorrow.
Which one? Is it the one with Sean, or is that coming out next year? The Killer Ambition?
Killer Ambition.
Nice.
That'll be tomorrow.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I'll tweet about it. But yeah, I interviewed Sean Kanan, and I know Lindsay Hartley's directing that. And those movies are great. Like that's what I was gonna say. Like when you're in the game for a long time, not a long time per se, but it's so cool.
It's been a long time.
No way. You're ageless, really. But no, and you had like the VHS boom. And then I think with the streaming, and I think with the Lifetime and all these networks, I think it's like such a great time to be an actor because you're going to have that opportunity to work.
Yeah. There's so much content being made right now. And I'm doing, I do this crazy comedy sort of web series on YouTube. So that's a whole different kind of filmmaking. And it's fun and freeing and exciting in a different way. And then working on the Lifetime stuff. We have so many different opportunities now. And what I think is really exciting is that for a lot of actors who are getting started, they don't have to be in LA right now. movies are getting made all over. So just actors should submit. You don't have to pick up and move to a big city. You can work where you're at and they'll bring you in for the show.
Yeah. No, I think it's so cool. And I think another thing is like that gap, like maybe in the 80s and 90s, if somebody want to make a low budget movie, I feel like when you look at it, there was a difference between the low budget and the not blockbuster, but even the mid range. I feel now with technology and the fact that you could use like that new iPhone Pro and it could look like you're filming something that is like Scorsese worthy. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really amazing what people can do now.
So when did you link up with Lifetime? How long have you been doing the Lifetime movies?
That's been recent.
Cool.
I did one Lifetime movie a few years ago where it was a small part where I was a grandma. It was right when I was first going through my gray hair transition.
Nice.
And one of my things now is I'm all about trying to portray women who are not grandma. Not that there's anything wrong with grandma roles, but because a woman has silver or gray hair, she's still more than a grandma.
Yes.
So I'm always trying to do, grandma role's great, but we got that. We got a lock on that one. Now let's go get all the doctor parts.
The doctor part.
Let's go be senator. So I did that one, and I had been auditioning and auditioning and auditioning, and it wasn't clicking. And then Killer Audition, they reached out to, or Killer Ambition, they reached out to my agent, my print agent, and she reached out to me and she's like, do you want to even consider this job? There's not very much money at it. I'm like, no, acting doesn't pay much money. Yeah. I do the print work to make money. And then.
Oh man, where was that? Was that up in Canada, in Vancouver?
No, we shot that here in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we shot it was COVID compliant set. We were masked and everything was so safe. And that's really, I'm sure you've had other people talk about this. COVID compliance really jacks the budget up on a movie.
Yeah.
It adds 25% to the budget, and it's really hard to spend 25% more money that you're not going to see on the screen. That's not better costumes, better makeup, better lighting, better locations. Yeah. It's just testing and masks and all of that stuff. So it was really challenging working in a film like that. But they did it. They did a great job. I was really impressed. They worked really, really hard at it.
That's great. Did you get to see it yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, that's even better.
I'm going to see it along with everyone else for the first time.
Oh, that's really awesome. No, the whole COVID thing, I talked to Brian Thompson when he has a role in Tragedy of Macbeth. And he said he was one of the first, I'm sure somewhere in the country, somebody was shooting. He was like one of the first films to get back after COVID. And he was talking about like, everybody's in like these hazmat suits, like the people testing. And then he goes, it's so weird. I pull up to the lot and I'm parked in, they did all the testing in the Everybody Loves Raymond like old studio. So he's like, I'm walking in and it's just like, how serious, obviously it is serious, but it's crazy. 25%. And if the picture of the show doesn't have that extra funds, maybe it can come out of the quality in some cases. I'm sure. Yeah.
It was we shot A Glass of Revenge in Virginia because we didn't have to be quite as COVID compliant there.
Yeah.
And it was a little easier. We basically took over the hotel and we took over every space and we lived in our little bubble. And, we wore masks when we'd be out and about, but when we were filming, we all were in our little safe little bubble. It was wonderful. It was really fun.
That's great. That's so cool that you linked up with them. Cause I feel like a lot of people I've talked to that work with Lifetime, it seems like they'll want you back and back. Like, it's like one of those things if they like you.
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
It's just, I would love to be working on Lifetime movies regularly. That would be super fun. They've got They've got drama.
You get
to do stuff.
Oh yeah. No, my wife loves those, and my mother really loves all those shows. But no, I just think it's so cool. I love the idea of just content being made because somebody's working and somebody is either getting their first job or they're continuing their career or even at the end of their career, and they're still able to work. And that's what I love about it, because you don't get in this business for like the money, because it's so rare to make it. Like the percentage and the number of people that actually live off of it, you do it because you love it. So it's cool. The more content, the more streaming, the better.
Yes. Yeah. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm here for it. So when did you, so you worked with Jim Wynorski on a couple of films?
Yeah. Yeah. I back in the 90s, Jim Wynorski has a fetish, as you may know.
I do know.
About. Yes, I think most people do.
Yes.
And I am not in that world. So he didn't use me on a lot of his films. And I knew why, and he knew why, and he knew why. So we would laugh about it. But then eventually he when he started making his little short little shoots, he brought me in, and it was, I had just lost a part. I had just lost out on a part that hurt me deeply. And so right at that time, Jim called and said, "Hey, you want to do this thing?" And I was like, "Yeah," because I need the little emotional boost.
Yes.
And so that's how I got on the one that was Papadopoulos.
Oh.
So we shot Witches of Brestwick.
Yeah.
And while we shot Witches of Brestwick, Clay Westervelt was there making the documentary Papadopoulos.
Wow. What was that like being on a film and in a documentary at the same time? Do they pull you aside and say, "So how is it working?" Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, it'd be like in the middle of lunch, like, or you'd be sitting around waiting between scenes, and Clay's like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" I'm like, "Great."
I gotta find this tonight.
Yeah. Oh, you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it.
That's great.
I ate it. I ate everything about it.
Oh, that's so awesome. So you mentioned a little bit about like your YouTube, and when you just got to the point that you're like, "I don't want to dye my hair anymore." Was that coincide around the same time?
Okay. 6 years ago, it was 2015, and I had found myself living in Arizona because a breakup, a blah, 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 life choices. One thing leads to another. Next thing you know, you're selling blenders in Arizona, and you're like, "This is not the life that I want."
Yeah.
And I decided to come back to LA. And, when you come back from Phoenix, you got to make some changes. You've been in Phoenix. There's got to be a rebirth. And I think this is the time. I'm coming back to acting, and I really want to be serious about it. And I have looked the same for so long with red hair or blonde hair. And I had a lot of gray. And I was, I would look at it every month and think, maybe that's a good color for me. Let's just find out. And I was 50 years old, so it wasn't like it was a midlife crisis or anything like that. I pretty much shaved my head and then let it just come in.
Wow.
I cut it super, super short. I left a little floof on top. I bleached it out, and then I colored it, and I colored it gray, and then just let it grow in from there. I was like, let's just see what happens.
And you showed up in town, they're like, "Oh, Monique, where were you at now?" And
so many people had so many opinions about my gray hair.
I'm sure.
People were so upset about it. I had men I went to high school with who I haven't spoken to since then, sending me messages on Facebook. I'm telling you for your own good. You need to go back to red. This is terrible. It's a terrible life choice. Don't do it. Like, dude, I haven't seen you since we were smoking blunt in the back of a pickup truck. on the way to the beach. I don't, geez. People had really strong opinions. And so I took my hair off and it's growing in. And as I'm living with this very different color on my head from anything that I had lived with, I didn't know what colors to wear. I didn't know what clothes I should wear. I didn't know how I should do my makeup. I got magazines and I flipped through the magazines and there's no women there with gray hair. So there's no advice for women with gray hair on how we're supposed to make ourselves look good. So I thought, well, I've been in the business a long time. I've learned something about makeup. I've learned something about hair, and I will just play on camera and make videos and put on makeup, and sometimes it'll be good and sometimes it'll be not good, but we'll all learn something. And doing that, I started to get a following, and it's up to about 285,000 now. And a lot of women have chosen to go gray because of that. So it's exciting that, I made this change for myself, but I'm trying to also represent how all of us look in the public eye, because society keeps telling women they're old all the time, especially with gray hair, especially with wrinkles. And I have such with my entire history of, being sexy, I thought I could really change people's opinion about what it is for a woman to have gray hair.
Yeah, Monique was awesome. There was she was so kind. She hung on for 10 minutes after my power went out and just waited, because I was running in the house trying to figure everything out. But man, I loved hearing the connections with B Movies for her, that her parents owned a convenience store that rented movies, and her dad explaining these are the ones that people rent. I can move them around the store. They see that box cover art and they rent it. That's where he made, his money. Years later, she's in those movies. So that was a cool connection. Again, uniquemonique.com, her YouTube channel. I'm going to put the link in the notes as well. And it's on her website too. And then also Killer Ambition with her and Sean Kanan, Lifetime Movie Network. Check it out. And your homework, Mirror Mirror 3, The Voyeur. It's on Plex TV. And like I said in the intro, I'll put a little best of clip thing on our Twitter page. And that's at Sequels Only. And that's it. Happy Valentine's Day. Tell someone you love them. That's all that matters, especially in the crazy times, crazier world that we live. Just tell somebody, hey, I love you, man. Make sure it's somebody that you know, because that can be a little weird. Just walk up to the, grocery clerk and you're like, I love you. They're like, oh, security. But yeah, so don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.